So hello, everybody, and welcome to our interactive portion of our QU Live event. As you probably know by now, I'm Debbie, and this is my co-host, Alexis. How are you tonight, Alexis?
I am well, Debbie. Thank you.
So as we were just discussing, this is our follow-up to the quantum principles as applied to life and healthcare. That's a mouthful. Hopefully you were able to watch the class in the video, but it was really something special. Alexis did just share the link there in the chat, but remember, there's plenty of time. If you haven't watched it, you can go back and check it out. She's basically in that class going over some language and creating clarity so that we can flow into our QU Live programs, ensuring that the language, as it applies to healthcare, is understood. So this is your, opportunity to save that link. It's no problem if you haven't watched it. Tonight's perfectly fine for you to participate in, and go back and watch it when you have time. How about we just, pardon me, everybody, recap last session, and then we'll get into our questions. Sound good? Yeah. Okay. So in the last class, Alexis covered the 5 bodies of consciousness, also known as the domains of existence. So she was explaining several features there. She explained that there's a downward causatory or causation effect, and they have a tangled hierarchical relationship to each other. And all of these bodies, or domains, as she puts it, exist on a spectrum, right? Going from construct to potentiality. In addition, she clarified some key terms such as tangled hierarchy, non-locality, entanglement, discontinuity, quantum collapse, and then added some other new theories that are coming up in the quantum world, which are kind of interweaving into each other. And if you haven't checked that out, she provides a link in the last class for additional supportive, newer information in the quantum world. So it's there for you. So what we decided to do tonight is read the questions that came in and then kind of answer them together instead of that one by one. So how about we start by reading the questions and then we'll just dive into it. Sound good?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's see, we have great questions here. So the first question, okay. Let's see, can you, oh, you know what? I should share screen. Shall I share screen? Yes. Okay, bear with me, everybody. Here you're going to see whether I do it or not. Is it working? Let me know, yes or no.
Is working?
Yeah,
working.
It happened. Okay, our first question. I don't know how to get rid of that, but can you explain in more detail what you mean by interacting fields of information when referring to the 5 bodies of consciousness? Excellent question. I'm just going to read a couple more here. Could you give an example of how the mental domain communicates through thought and mind as its language? Interesting. Okay. Next question here. What is the significance of the influencer for each domain? Could you provide an example to help us understand this concept better? I have a fun example / analogy later for this one, so I'm excited about this one. These are really great questions, by the way. Alexis, care to take the next few questions and then we'll answer?
Sure, Debbie. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay,
Yes.
so next few questions. In the context of the vital domain, what do you mean by morphic resonance and morphogenetic fields? Next would be, how does the concept of archetypes apply to the supramental domain's language? Next, could you elaborate on the tangled hierarchical relationship of the 5 domains and how it ties into the triggering of downward causation? And there's one more, and that is, can you explain the term quantum collapse and its association with downward causation in the context of the 5 domains? So all very interrelated questions. So but all of them are great questions. What do you think,
Yeah.
Debbie?
I think so, absolutely. I'm really excited. You were saying when we were meeting together that it's really gets a conversation going, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly it.
And that's the goal. That's why we're here tonight for you, is that we can, have a conversation. So actually, before we begin, let's just remind everybody, we would love it, love it, love it if you would please feel like you're part of this conversation. You can raise your hand in the chat. You could type the question in if you're not comfortable. But just try and if you do ask a question, just make sure it's pertaining to this topic that we're talking about tonight, just so we can stay on point. Okay.
Yes, awesome. And we've decided to reserve a few minutes at the end of the class to discuss this week's announcement that's been a hot topic on Facebook regarding the discussion attestation. So that's kind of your bonus for today.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So we have my screen up. That's set.
Awesome. Okay.
Right.
So sweet. So yes, just to reiterate, we're going to choose to answer these questions answer these questions with like all these sub questions that we've identified, like all in one. So we're going to answer the main questions and kind of hit the sub questions within the main question. I hope that makes sense. So we are ready. So Debbie.
Like a tangled kind of situation, right?
Yeah. All right, let's hope this works. So
Okay.
Debbie, what's the first question again, or the main
Okay,
question?
so here it is up on the screen for everybody. Can you explain in more detail what you mean by interacting fields of information when referring to the 5 bodies of consciousness or domains of existence, as you also called it?
Yeah.
So I love this conversation. Alexis, I'm going to let you take over. You really, truly are the expert in this area. So we have I love this visual here. This kind of, for me, creates that torus field interacting kind of thing. So.
Sure. So, okay. First of all, to clear up the whole bodies versus domains thing, no matter what we call it, they are a platform for several types of informational fields that intermingle with each other, right? Obviously, this doesn't just apply to the human body. This applies to all of reality, right? The reason I use domain is therefore because it implies the environment and not just a body, which we have come to associate with the human body. So long story short, domain is a more all-encompassing term from my perspective. Therefore, I will refer to them as domains from now on. So then, the reason why the domains are interacting fields of information is twofold. One, they all intermingle with each other. The higher or deeper levels provide energetic resources for the lower, more tangible levels, and the lower, more tangible levels provide a feedback mechanism to inform, reaffirm, or rewire information blueprints in higher levels for when they are called upon to be used again. And this is what we're referring to when we say they have a tangled hierarchical relationship. Okay, so number 2 of why the domains are interacting fields of information is that they all draw from the same pool of information that we call consciousness. That is capital C consciousness, the complete base of information. Remember, the bliss domain contains all the free-form frequencies in the cosmos waiting around to be used. They are essentially the building blocks waiting to be integrated into some sort of blueprint of a concept or form to fulfill some sort of function that we intuit for practical use within the context of our everyday world. So because of their tangled hierarchical nature, that feedback mechanism I was talking about, no single domain could exist without the other. They all need each other, just like we need each other. So although these domains like constantly inform each other in a tangled fashion, the initial line of communication is still downward causation. So that's when creative entities like ourselves have an intuition, and that triggers the process of pulling things down toward the physical domain as best as we can. So it's like a transportation chain. So if you cut out the plane or the train or the vital domain, you're breaking the chain. Your package will not be delivered. So all in all, the idea that these domains are interacting fields of information is a very literal statement. They all pull from the same resource pool, and they inform each other. They inform and reinforce each other through an innate feedback mechanism that allows adjustments to be made on each domain level, so that manifestations are possible because communication remains clear, because all domains can stay in coherence.
Yeah, that is such an incredible explanation. And you know, as you and I were talking, I had come up with this analogy that I'd like to share with everybody as a way of thinking it. It helps me. I don't know about you, but I like to think of the tree of life, or did you see the movie Avatar? The tree, Iwa. I have a picture of Iwa right here, and then the tree of life below, right? So Iwa, or the tree of life, can be looked at in two ways in this analogy. One as the global network in entanglement theory, and the other is as she's a part of everything, and whatever influences her influences the lower domains, right? So in other words, if you were to cut the branches of Iwa, or the tree of life, you would see the lower domains, the roots connected, that they're all affected by way of going into action, right? I know this is a little silly, don't take it too seriously, but it's just another way of visualizing information. So let's stay with this tree of life thing and start with the bliss body, okay? Think of the top branches, as you can see here in the picture. They're like reaching for higher consciousness, right? This idea corresponds with the bliss body's quest for the field or spirit or divine, that, you know, that outermost layer, right? That's the intangible layer. Remember the qualities that Alexis had discussed. Pardon me. The higher branches are kind of like the bliss body's ability to interact and receive information. And remember, the bliss body is limitless. Okay, so let's move down and think of the tree's core pulse with life. This core pulse is like the universal knowledge of the supramental body, or ascension, or elevated and expanded awareness. The supramental body is divine intelligence, and sudden insight comes from this domain, right? When we're thinking about healing, our sudden insight is from the supramental body. Remember too, this is also an intangible quality, and the language is the reservoir of all archetypes. This is, you know, this is an influencer. That's the intuition is our influencer, right? So, so what does it look like? What does influence look like in this domain, right? So, for me, I think immediately of prayer, or meditation, or mantra, spiritual practices, however you connect to that unified field of energy, or, you know, everybody has a different method, right? So, okay, we can think of the branches as like that mental body. The branch could stand for, each branch is like a thought, okay? And they're intricate mental processes or willful thinking. This body, or domain as we're now calling it, is of the mind, therefore meaning is assigned. So the branches are like our reach for knowledge and meaning, right? Okay, so moving along, where do you think we would see the vital body in the tree of life? I wish somebody could just shout it out, right? So if the vital body is represented through energy channels, right, then the tree's ecosystem kind of mirrors this energy of the vital body, the ecosystem. Think like life force, right? So just like the tree of life or any, Iwa, whatever you're thinking, it supports the other life forms. The vital body impacts our physical being or physical health with energy, aliveness, but also through interpretation, right? So, for example, animals or other living organisms that are inhabiting the space around or within the tree will sense if this tree is sick, right? That's the sense in the vital body. And this is a more tangible state, but it's semi-tangible in quality. And the language of this is, as we were talking about, is energy channels, which are meridians, chakras, blueprints, morphogenetic fields, energy signatures, all the electromagnetic frequencies influenced by way of feeling, right? And that then influences our physical domain, right? In other words, our feelings impact our health. And I don't know if anybody's experienced this directly. I personally have. So it's not the same type of thing like if somebody pinches you or hugs you. Well, maybe a hug, but there's a very real semi-tangible experience happening. If anybody has ever attended an amazing Kundalini class or an incredible sound therapy for balancing chakras, there's a real living energetic experience occurring on this level. It's almost hard to put into words. Okay, so let's move on. What about the tree's roots? The roots are, in my mind, like the physical body, right? Imagine how we see them, anchoring, right? They attach from the trunk and feed directly into the earth. This connection is a tangible connection, right? Physical, tangible. So the tree of life's roots anchor deep into the earth, which reflects that grounding nature of the physical body. And this ties all living systems together. And being in that physical or tangible quality, our influencers are kinetic forces, thermodynamics, and other living organisms that are all impacting that physical quality, right? So just like the roots of the tree anchor and drive action, they also serve as a foundation firmly holding it in place, right? So intertwining roots of the tree symbolize interconnectedness and grounding, much like kinetic forces are the source of stability and nourishment for us, right? And the kinetic forces are inherent to things in motion, and the roots are fundamental to the tree's survival. They absorb nutrients like water and energy from the earth, copying how our physical body draws substances from its surroundings, like oxygen. We need sunlight. Temperature affects our internal environment. Our external environment affects us. Touch affects us, right? So in essence, this representation of the fundamental aspect of existence demonstrates that relationship and balance between motion and stability, like the balance between the physical body, right? We have movement and we have rest, okay? Now, remember how Alexis explained the 5 bodies of consciousness could be understood as domains of existence? It's important to note here that these interacting fields of information are the very foundation that we rely on. The higher domains have a direct effect, like a trickle-down effect. In other words, that downward causation model, higher influences subtle energy. The outermost layer, the bliss, affects the next layer, the supramental, and so on, and so on, and so on. So I have a slide here to show that model here. I can move this, right? I'm afraid to touch that. Okay. You can see the slide 4 here, that downward model here. and our layers of consciousness, information flowing in a downward causation or causatory cause and effect model. Unless Alexis, you have an example here, right?
Yeah. Let's see. We got a comment.
Oh, yay.
I love comments.
I do too.
Do
Do.
When as healing practitioners. Yes. Yeah, awesome. Everybody, please read the comment. Thank you, Trudy. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I have an example. So take anger as an example. I'm just choosing an emotion. I'm choosing a quote unquote negative emotion right now. It comes to us as a feeling. Okay. So these feelings are associated with organs. Where does that circuitry, that feeling to organ connection come from? Where does it come from? It comes from the ancestral ingraining of reactions from archetypal events over time, events that have become associated with that particular reaction of anger. So for example, something bad happens to your car. Your subconscious aspect based on human history recognizes that particular type of event as having a bad connotation, since so many of our ancestors have failed to change their maladaptive reaction to such an event into a response instead of a reaction. They've failed to change their maladaptive reaction into a response that is conducive to solving problems without labeling the self as being at fault. So when humans in history regularly encounter a certain event and then regularly react to that event in a maladaptive, undesirable way, we are literally practicing discoherence as a default reaction, throwing off the harmony of our self-referential system, the tangled hierarchy, which is also found within ourselves. So this incoherence is then reflected as at the vital level by misaligning of the chakras, for instance, perpetuating the anger or other associated emotions, slowly potentiating associated diseases down the line, diseases that are associated with those emotions. So in the image here, you can see, you can get an idea of what a misalignment can look like as measured by the biowell in this example, which reverberates through all domains or all bodies in this case, since we are actually specifically talking about the human body. Because it eventually feeds into the physical as disease over time. And it simultaneously feeds back into the archetypes catalog, I like to call it, to reaffirm the default reaction unless we change it. All this is an example of the inevitable entanglement across domains and the power we have to influence their representation by just speaking the right language. So, yeah, let's go to slide 7. Okay. Conversely, let's look at the effects of the emotions of joy and love. So an event happens, it triggers a default reaction that is joy or love based on past similar events experienced by other humans in history. That response then feeds back to inform the quote unquote archetypes catalog, which resides in the supramental, by the way. It informs this archetypes catalog, potentiating the same response for similar events in the future, unless it is changed by enough people and over a persistent enough time. But like in this case, it's a positive default reaction, you know, it's not legitimately reactive in this case, it's actually loving. So why would you want to change that, right? Now keep in mind, the mechanism of changing such a reaction theoretically lies in the mental domain. We must acknowledge the current visceral reaction, access the mental domain, then change the meaning of the type of event. So you change the meaning of the type of event we so choose to respond differently to. So in simple terms, we want to change our reactions to responses. We want to change our reactions to responses. This is the practice of good energy management. So when we confidently, assertively, and with conviction make a decision to override the default reaction and choose a new response, well then, it's safe to say we experienced an aha moment, right? Or at least we soon will, at the very least. So this aha moment is the feeling associated with the quantum collapse in action, where all things happen in an instant, the quantum collapse, or in a discontinuous movement, as Dr. Goswami would say, for example. Think of it like an on-off switch rather than a dimmer. The particle is there, and then it just reappears somewhere else. The meaning was perceived in a darker way, and now it's completely upside down, and you see the bright side of the situation. You see the light. Again, this is our human power at work. It works because we operate with the same tangled hierarchical mechanism as the cosmos does on the grandest scale. Yet we have the upper hand in a way because we live in a solidified, highly constructed physical world that is tangible enough to identify when certain archetypes are not working. And so we can then make measurable changes. I mean, what's the alternative? Like, what's the alternative? If we had no concretized physical domain, we would be walking around in a completely unstable world of potentiality, not conducive to anything. Arguably, then, we wouldn't need healthcare or anything because we would all have to change perceptions, and we would all have these changing perceptions, these fleeting thoughts that would never solidify because there's no physical platform. So we couldn't agree on anything, and life would just be all infinite potential, but nothing that ever solidifies. I mean, like, that would actually be no fun, right? I mean, could you imagine, like, here's an analogy for you, okay? So it's like those times when you have all these great ideas of what you want to do with your life. You have all these hopes and dreams, but you never actually actualize any of them because you just keep jumping from one thing to the next because you can't commit and you keep changing your mind. Like, you actually end up with nothing in the end, nothing that actually changes or influences the world in any meaningful way. So that's my spiel on how domains interact, on why we need them, and our power within them. So thank you for allowing me to rant.
I loved your rant. It was awesome. But you also answered the question about the quantum collapse. So thank you for addressing that. So we don't even need to handle that one. I don't know if you noticed, I just jumped over the slide. But I also really loved your analogy about that on-off switch with the dimmer. It showcases that aha moment and the discontinuity, that it's just that, really gives you that nice visual example there. So I think we have another question here that's a little bit separate from our mix. Okay. This is a good one. I love it. What's the significance of the influencer for each domain? Could you provide an example to help us understand this concept better? Alexis?
Sure. That actually ties in nicely with the previous question. So the influencer in each domain triggers changes in the domains below it. The key is you only need to access a certain level of consciousness, lowercase c consciousness this time, which is synonymous with awareness. You only need to access a certain level of consciousness to influence the domain within which the problem lies. For example, to access the bliss domain, you need to go into a meditative state where you become no one, nowhere, no thing, in no place and no time. You guess who said that? Who said that?
I know who said that. That's
Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe Dispenza said that.
Yeah.
Okay. So To access the bliss domain, you need to access this high-level meditative state to gain source information, those free-form amino acid-like frequencies that I spoke about last time, from the state of space we call potentiality, so that new ideas can be generated. And I talked about the bliss being this sort of akin to 100% pure potentiality, theoretically speaking, right? So this is utilizing your power of fundamental creativity, right? When you need to access the intangible domains, such as the supramental or the bliss, you are getting into that fundamental creativity realm where you're going outside of the context of the common collective world and whatever the majority agrees upon. You're kind of going against the grain and reaching for something more, because that's what you need to fulfill the new function that you're looking to serve in your world at the moment. So this is a very high level conscious experience when we're accessing the bliss domain, where we are very deliberately, very consciously going against the grain, as I said, of everyday brainwaves, literally. And we are doing this to speak intimately to our subconscious mind with the will to change our programming, like with the will to change our programming. That is not necessarily, though, the same level of consciousness that I need to access when I just need a new way to solve a technical problem. Like if the problem is basic, I don't need to reach up to the supramental or bliss domain. I don't have to go into a deep meditative state to solve the problem. This is the difference between fundamental creativity and situational creativity. Situational creativity meaning when I already have the tools in this plane of existence, in the collective consciousness to use to solve the problem at hand. So I'm sure you've all heard the saying, you can't solve the problem with the mentality that created it, or you can't, and I'll thank Debbie for this one, you can't dig yourself out of a hole that you dug. You have to climb out of it, okay? So these quotes also go to show that human beings live to solve problems, people. In fact, when we don't have any problems in our lives, we often create them just so that we feel normal again, because we can solve problems. Like, I would go so far as to say that this visceral drive is to solve problems is actually very productive as part of our vocation here on Earth, which is to contribute to the development of the archetypes and our reactions and responses to them, ultimately predisposing generations to come, hopefully, to a more healthful life and more conscious creations, right? So we are literally contributing to the development of archetypes as we live, as we choose to either consciously respond to situations or to go with the default reaction if we're not very in our conscious, optimality, I'll say. I hope that makes sense. But an example I could think of for you, I'd like to propose that you picture tools in your tool shed. So there are times when you don't need to access such high or free-form levels of information in the supramental or the bliss domains, as I said. Sometimes you just need to solve an everyday problem by using the tools you already have and just use them in a different way. Sometimes it just takes some mental level reframing. So if I need to fix a leak in my kitchen and I have a generally equipped tool shed, most likely I have the basic tools, and let's just say I have the skills that I need to fix this leak, okay? But what if I messed up my car really bad? Maybe then I have to find solutions outside of my tool shed to fix the problem because I've never done it before. And so I have to go outside of my tool shed, maybe go to the store, reach beyond my everyday scope to solve this particular problem. Get what I'm saying? So that's the whole idea. Situational versus fundamental creativity. That's what this question kind of reminded me of right off the bat. Does anyone have any new perspectives or feedback on any of those concepts that we've went on about thus far, like domains, their interactions, maybe any anecdotes you'd like to share or discuss, any experiences. Like this is the interactive session. Remember, we got to start the conversation, and this is a safe place to do so, right? Everybody's point of view is totally valid.
It look like we have some questions and comments here in the.
Yeah, let's see.
When I open up the chat, it's on my screen. Is it showing on the screen here that you're looking at by chance? Okay, good, wonderful. Okay, must just be the way my screens are overlapping. All right, let's just go through these. Do we have our own personal, Troy? Okay, do we have our own personal supramental domain? Or are we sharing the same collective, oh, this is good, same collective supramental domain? Or this third scenario, let me see, I just lost my spot, where we all have our own, and these personal domains then contribute to the collective version of the human species, and all human beings share, tap into, in addition to their own personal one. What a good question, Troy. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Alexis, I have something to contribute, but I'd like you to just kind of clarify the personal domain, and then we can get more into that sharing to the collective and where that exists a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have heard before that consciousness is, so what I said at the beginning, where all domains pull from the same pool of information, that is capital C consciousness, right? The complete base of information. So that means the supramental, inevitably, being a high up there domain, has access to that entire pool of information. And when I say we feed back into it by experiencing life on this concretized planet, on this earth, just existing, this is our playing field. And inevitably and necessarily so, this is our playing field. And our reactions / responses to any event in our life, whether seemingly insignificant or seemingly huge, we feed back information to the supramental domain to reaffirm or deny archetypes that already exist, right? Or ever will exist, since, thinking out there, technically time is not a thing, time is only a construct of our world, apparently, because we do require that to function and actually serve our purpose here. So it's kind of inevitable and necessary. But to answer your question more specifically, I think the supramental domain, in fact, I think all domains are collective domains at the highest level. And they're sort of like big nets that kind of catch all the frequential information or the resonances that we send out. They record that resonance, our every response, our every reaction. It's like a huge recording device. And it's a feedback device at the same time. Yet, I don't know if you guys have heard me discuss about my whole concept between the differentiating reality and actuality. I kind of, when you ask the question, well, what is reality? I sort of thought about it, branched it off into two: reality and actuality. Actuality would be your personal experience of what is real, that maybe not everybody could see it, because but it's just as real as the collective reality, except temporarily only you can experience it, because it's only real for you at the moment, because it's something that you're creating. It's some emission of information that you're feeding into this archetypes catalog, right? That over time, if you persist in believing in the unseen, that is your actuality, that you're trying to make the reality, you have to persist. It keeps feeding into the collective archetypes catalog of the supramental domain, right? And the more you convince yourself, the more you convince people around you that your actuality, your personal reality, is integrated in the reality. It is the reality that majority of people can say, yes, that is the truth. That is the truth. So I think there's different fractal levels to everything. So I think we could say that, yes, there is a personal supramental domain, right? That sort of manages your actuality. But because of the fractal nature of the universe and the holographic nature of the universe, it's all feeding back to the collective level supramental domain. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it reminds me of that conversation that we shared about with that Nassim Harriman was having about how everything feeds into this layer of information and it contributes to the collective consciousness. And you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at this. You know, are we receiving information like download, some people would say, you know, and where's that coming from? A field that's fed information from what, right? So we're a contributor to the field just by way of being alive, you know, and then we collect from it as well. And I love the torus. I brought this picture back, the torus field, because it helps create that that image of one giant collective consciousness, just kind of regenerating and contributing, and everything influences it eternally, right? And how far does that go, right? So, you know, I agree with you that it does have like a component of two different ways we could look at this, like our own personal and as the larger scope, right? So really great question, a lot to think about there.
Yeah.
But yeah, realize that, you know, in this understanding that everything is going to influence the environment and then come back again and then influence our domains. It's just a continuum, right? Like that. Like that forest field. All right, great question. All right, what do we have?
Yeah, I think the big Q up in the sky was saying that Trudy has a question.
Excellent. Is this the question that is the interaction of the domains fields is concretely, is that the one you're talking about?
No, I think it's the one where it says, if appropriate, could you, or I could share, oh no, she said, I could share a concrete example to experience the interaction of domains to actually manifest a concept in the mental domain into the physical. Trudy, would you like to share?
Can we unmute Trudy?
She could actually, I think she could unmute herself.
Oh, we don't have to ask the big Q in the sky.
The big Q in the sky. Maybe we could spotlight or pin Trudy or something.
It seems she's already unmuted, but I don't know if she has her because it doesn't show her muted. She is unmuted, but I can't hear her.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Well, Trudy, feel welcome to test your microphone.
No, we can't hear you.
Oh, darn.
I see her mouth moving, and she's unmuted.
Check it. I always have this issue too, Trudy. Check which microphone you're using. Sometimes we have I know I have a webcam and then a microphone on my computer, so maybe it's.
Debbie, as a side note, maybe you're still sharing screen. Maybe we could just cancel the screen share for now. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Get everyone's faces up here.
Oh, I'd love that. People. Troy
people
contributed. Yes,
of the world.
Troy added more. I agree. Our personal catalog, or what we think is our personal version, can be likened to a limited, I have a little thing in the way there, subset by self-imposition of the collective catalog that we are able to access in any given space. Yes, space and time. Yeah, that kind of reminds me. I'm going to go a little bit. All right, I'm going woo-woo. Okay, sorry. You know, it was a period of time. It was going to happen. I think of the Merkaba, or some people say Merkaba. It's like the Star of David, the triangle this way and then the triangle this way, right? if you can envision that, we are placed right into the center where the top peak of the triangle accesses information downloads, and the lower part of the triangle is our connection, right, to like the tree again, and then receiving information. And then what happens? So if you can see my necklace, here's the root, and then it comes up back around, and look, it's received again, and and what's reaching for it in that bliss domain. So great contribution, Troy. Very cool.
Yeah.
I
It
try
really,
not to too,
ooh, that reminds me. Okay, this is a really good segue, by the way. And Trudy, once you get your microphone like situated, just shout out anytime, okay? Cut me off, I don't care.
Yes.
I was gonna say, everybody discussing topics, like literally vocalizing topics, okay? Even if it's just for yourself at home, like you'll warm up to us eventually, right? Hopefully. But vocalizing the topics really helps you learn. It helps you ingrain and again, reaffirm, sending that information back up there to those higher levels so that it's actually based on Rupert Sheldrake's research, easier for everybody else to reiterate, okay? To kind of grasp. Believe it, right? So, I know sometimes it's hard, it's hard to have it's hard for some of us to build conviction, especially if we haven't gone through like a profound healing. And like we're all here at Quantum University, like we all have different experiences. I really get that. And a lot of you are trying to start your practice or you're progressing through your programs. And some of you have that roadblock you get because of it's actually a conviction situation. What can I do with this? Is this actually working? Can I work this magic on myself?
It does seem like a magic. That collapse seems like, well, how do I access that collapse for myself? Especially if you're drawn here because of a personal experience. Like I think most of us are. We all have our own personal health issues, or we have a loved one with a health issue. I know that's what brought Dr. Paul into the field of medicine, and we've had personal conversations about our own experiences. So I'm curious if anybody has had their own aha or quantum collapse or quantum leap, a radical remission, whatever you choose to moment of fundamental creativity. If you had an experience, I personally have, and I'm curious if anybody else has. If you want to just put a little thing in the chat, if you've experienced this kind of miraculous moment that we're learning about here at Quantum.
Woo! Miracles happen every day.
Yes. Yay. Oh, wonderful. Now, I don't want to say your name incorrectly. Veronique. How would you say that, please? Veronique. Oh, still happening.
Still happening.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. How exciting. And I'm sure that's what drove you here.
Catalina.
Yes. Oh, yes. Wonderful. You too. So wonderful. And it's amazing because in order to get to that place, it's almost as though we have to stop the major, we think the influence is that trying, but it's not. It's the moment of creativity when we're not actually trying, because when we're trying, we're in the egoic state, as opposed to that state of shifting the no to the no mind, right? As we were comparing Dr. Joe Dispenza's conversation earlier. So when we go into the space of no mind, we're going into the field of potential, right? That's where we are able to, I guess, as Troy would say, receive these information downloads, or allow the body to then see a new design, create a new design by way of changing our beliefs, right? And what does that look like? It's got to be different for everybody. I don't know about you, but I went around trying 9,000 things when I learned about potential for quantum leaps. I was writing healing and love on my water bottles and, meditating and all these practices, trying to access those higher domains to put myself into the state where there's no mind. We're not holding on to the old belief systems that Alexis was talking about earlier, that mental shift, that mental reframing. And it's like the deprogramming of the default system. We have to be able to recognize first, oh my goodness, I'm in that old mindset. And how do I go into a state of trust and just know that this healing can occur? And I think a lot of people find that it actually you have to become a part of the experience, which means a literal letting go and going into a state of like a state of trust, or a state of even deep connection to a divine, whatever your divine is, whether it's universal, unified field of energy, or if it's a god, or if it's just trusting in the natural process of life, and feeling the interconnectedness to all living sentient beings. But in order to actually change that mental condition, we have to become of no mind, meaning not living in the egoic state, right? Beautiful. Anyway, oh no, don't apologize. Troy's back on. I love it. I love it. Sorry to jump back into the subject. Can we dig? It can't dig oneself out of the hole. That's my favorite line. Does that mean to solve a problem? Right. Yes, we cannot solve the problem with the problem that got us there. So in other words, that's exactly what I was just saying. We can't think our way into a problem that we got there by thinking, right? Mind assigns meaning, which then that's the mental domain, then reflects to the physical domain. So if the mind is assigned incorrect meaning through, as Alexis said, it's passed down, ancestral, whatever, brainwashed, right? We're all kind of brainwashed, right? Then we have this automatic default response. Oh, what if that's incorrect? We have to erase the board and start all over again. The situational creativity. Let me finish this sentence. I got a little excited. Whereas for a new problem, more serious situational creativity, or even fundamental creativity is needed. Yeah, 100%. We are needing a new mind, a new state. And how do we achieve the new mind and new state, right? And there's ways to access that. So a lot of people access this new mind, new state through focused awareness meditation, or mantra meditation. Dr. Paul talks about a particular sound, activation of the body in such a way that we're moving fluid up to our pineal, and we're massaging that pineal, and we're having an ability to have like an expansive view of a new potential reality for ourselves. So we are, in fact, if you can visualize and see the new reality, not just see it, but you need to also experience and feel it as if it's happening, then our body then responds by knocking on the cell receptor, like, hey, new story coming in, guys. There's a whole new protocol here able for us to heal, and the body will redesign and follow suit as to what you're saying to the body. Don't follow the old mechanism. You're in the hole, and if you keep digging, you got into the hole. Well, if you keep digging, you're going further. So you have to stop and shut off the egoic character and try a different approach. So what is that different approach? How can you access a different approach? Everybody has a different way of accessing it. Some people go to prayer groups. Some people practice the meditations I was talking about. Some people do sound therapy. Whatever can access the release of the egoic state, to access the domains that will allow you to then reflect into a new mind, a new way of being, a new personality, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, right? Over time, we form our personalities by doing the same things, acting the same way, the same response over and over and over again, until it's just ingrained in our minds. We'll go into this more in our neuroplasticity class. But if we have ingrained that pattern into our mind, we have to climb our way out of the hole, as opposed to digging our way further into the hole, by creating a new mind, a new state of being, right? Makes sense a little bit?
And you guys also gotta think that, this quantum language, these concepts such as situational and fundamental creativity, they don't just apply to healthcare. They don't just apply within the realm of us helping facilitate a healing for our clients. This applies to all of reality. So, for example, even in a complete mundane situation, let's use the car again. I need to fix my car. My tire popped. What do? I don't need fundamental creativity for that. I need common knowledge, which is access to the already existing mental frameworks that the majority of people have an understanding, or I could find it online, because online, the internet is a construct of this world that I have easy access to. Why? Because the majority of people believe in it, okay? And I could look it up and I could follow those beliefs and fix the tire using situational creativity, which is literally using concepts, applying concepts that are already known within the context of our reality, of our common knowledge. Perhaps you got to apply a new combination of those already common knowledge things. But in any situation, in any problem-solving situation, you do use creativity. And I don't care how quote unquote egotistical or materialistic a person is, they are a human being and they are using creativity to solve their everyday problems, whether they acknowledge it or not. The only time we jump to using fundamental creativity is when we have to access less tangible domains of existence. And this is particularly the type of creativity or problem-solving scenario that we need when we're encountering a disease that is perhaps chronic, that is perhaps mysterious, where clients come to you and they're like, I've visited like 10 different specialists. Nobody could tell me the answer. What do? I need to find an answer for myself. And what are you going to tell them? What are you going to tell them? First of all, they have to become convinced in their own, create your own actuality, people. You have to help facilitate their conviction of them being able to heal themselves.
Entanglement.
That's it, right? And that is fundamental creativity being employed. They have to learn to employ fundamental creativity, accessing higher domains, less evident domains, to get that information needed, which is, again, information that is not common knowledge. That's why we call it fundamental creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well done. The time has flown by. Trudy, I'm sorry we did not get to hear your question, but please feel free to send a message to us about that, and we can address that in one of our little pop-up videos. So Troy's being funny on the chat. You're very funny. But please, Trudy, I want to hear what you have to say, and I'd love to hear the example. So we actually are already at 7:01, and I don't know, do you want to quickly just touch on Dr. Tara's post, or do you want to just save that for, yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's honestly touch on it. Sorry to go over time, everybody. If you can't stay, definitely catch this on the recording, but we did promise we're going to address it, and so we're going to address it.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen very quickly. If any, can you see my Dr. Tara post here?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, yeah. So Dr. Tara surprised the whole university and made
Whole
this
universe.
The whole universe she's actually on with us here. Hello, Dr. Tara, how are you?
Hi, everybody.
Would you quickly like to just make this announcement for those people who didn't hear, or am I putting you on the spot? You can
Yes. Yes, we made this announcement, and it's funny that some of you were asking, "Is this a prank?" No, it is real, and no longer we have a discussion at this session. But one question that you were asking is this for new students, or this applies to everybody, like the students who enrolled before? Yes, this is for everybody. So no longer mandatory, but yes, if you have any questions, you can ask. And yeah, that's a great news. And that's for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tara. I'd just like to remind everybody, if the discussion posts were helpful for you, you can still do them. So,
Absolutely, yes.
Yep. And we have students from all over the world with language barriers and things like this. So this decision what Dr. Paul made was a very thought out and thoughtful decision for our students to have them really be able to focus more on the content as opposed to some things that could limit their time, right? We have a lot of working professionals, and this was it was difficult for our international students and some students who perhaps didn't want to share, their posts. But if you were like me and enjoyed the discussion post, you can continue to contribute and post. Feel free. It's totally up to you, but the pressure is off of you, and we can continue now to focus on course content with a little less pressure, which if Dr. Paul is watching, we all appreciate that. My only complaint is that I just finished my last course, so this didn't happen sooner.
I see both sides of the story here. Okay. Because like I told you earlier in this meeting, it's important to vocalize your thoughts. It shows your comprehension of the material at hand. And you know what? I can't tell you how many times I've been like, discussion attestation. I need to write down my thoughts now. This is kind of annoying, but you know what? After the fact, it really, and sometimes it's painful, but it enlightened me on what I didn't know and what I had to look into some more. So in that case, discussion attestation, it helps you learn. But here's the thing. You decided, and I don't want to make assumptions by any means, but a lot of us came and enrolled into this online university because we have not just a desire to get more credentials, because that's what people in this collective need to sort of validate what we do, but we also kind of want to learn this stuff. Like, we legitimately are interested in it, and that's why we enrolled, to learn this particular topic. And so I think doing your own sort of discussion attestation just for yourself to facilitate your own learning is a great thing. You got to remember, that AI is a thing these days, and a lot of large educational institutions, like, they're just sticking with multiple choice type of things, because how can you really track at this point if the AI answered the question or if the student answered the question? I mean, it's still kind of hard to trace. So that is also an argument. But you see what I mean? You could really look at it in both ways. But I think that the workflow, like, I'm in the master's program, I'm doing the PhD track, and I think this is going to make the workflow a lot easier, and it's going to actually encourage me to spend more time learning what I am interested in. So that, I think, is a con. I am happy about it, but I know that I'm the type of person who will research when needed. Mm-hmm. So I think it just comes down to the type of person you are.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to, we did finally get a word from Trudy about climbing out of the hole we dug. I believe we have to get into our subconscious to get into our higher domain and probably into the supramental, and do a leap rather than a climb with the physical strength. Right, 100%. Mm-hmm. It's the meaning is that you cannot use the same mechanism that got you there. It is a leap as opposed to a dig, or, as I said, a climb, right? But what does that leap look like for everybody? How do we access that leap, right? So everybody has a individualized type approach. But I'm glad we were able to get to Trudy's comment. All right, people, we are a little over time, but I think this was a really wonderful interactive QU Live. And our next class is the 6th of September, and it will be, the topic is on holistic anatomy. This is going to directly tie in, so I hope that you all can attend, and we can have some fun together. Continue to use the questions, you know, send them to us. We love them, and they help generate energy and momentum for us, so keep them coming. And anything specific you want to talk to us about, send us the questions. And thank you all for attending tonight. It was so wonderful to have this discussion with you all live. And for those of you who aren't live with us that are watching the recordings, we hear you. We're sorry, we miss you, but we will definitely adjust some of the schedules to work live with you as well. All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Alexis, for your insight, your wisdom. You are just brilliant, and we all appreciate you so much. Thank you to all of our students and our team that's here. And have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night. See you next time.
Bye.